So we have a rectangle here, and each of these slabs are 40 by 20 centimeters. And the idea is how many of these slabs are going to go along here? Well, they're saying X of them, and down the side here there's going to be Y of them. So if you think each length is 40, so X lots of 40 will give you the length along. And if each of these width is 20 and Y lots of 20. So we can write an expression for this. If we think of that length there as x lots of 40, you get 40 lots of x. And if you think of the other length, it's 20 lots of y. So we have a length and a width, and so perimeter is around the outside. So if we think of, we've got 2 lots of 40x and we've got 2 lots of 20y, and we can write an expression for that. We have 2 lots of 40x and we have 2 lots of 20y, giving us 80x plus 40y. And I should point out to you, this is in centimeters. We're working in centimeters. Okay, I use 40 and 20, not 0.4, 0.2 for meters, dealing with centimeters. There's a reason why I mention this. When we move on to part 2, we can see here the perimeter's got to be 64 meters. So the first thing to appreciate is you should realize that in centimeters. And we're saying if the perimeter is equal to 64, then this expression is equal to 64. So if we have P being 64 meters, that's going to be 6,400 centimeters. And so if we equal our expression 80x plus 40y being equal to 64,000, then we can rearrange that so that y is the subject. What do we mean by that? We mean that y is on its own on one side and everything else is on the other. So we end up, when dividing by 40, we get 160 minus 2x. Now, each of those two parts is reasonably straightforward, and it begins to get difficult on the next page. We have requesting for a value of x for when the area is as large as possible. So what we can do is we can, there's a couple of different ways that you could do it, just by brute force, just trying out different numbers and seeing what you get. But to some extent we need an expression for area first of all. So if you think of area as being length by width, we're going to multiply the length, which was 40 lots of x, by our width, which was 20 lots of y, which gives us 800xy. But that in its current form is not of much help to us. We need to come up with an expression that involves just x. So we can substitute what we got from part 2 into there instead of the y. So instead of the y, we had 160 minus 2x. And that tidies up to become 128,000x minus 1,600x squared. Now what we're being asked to do is find the area that's as large as possible. So if you think about it, we've got an expression for area which is a negative quadratic. So it's a sort of an N-type shaped curve, and you can see, if you think of that N-shaped curve, you've got a maximum point. Okay, so we could find when do we get that maximum point? Well, we get to the maximum point when the first derivative is equal to 0, i.e. your dy by dx is equal to 0. In this case, it's area that we're actually, not y, it's area. And so if we think of the first derivative of the area differentiated with respect to x, we get 128,000 minus 3,200x. What have I just done there? Well, when you have an x term, it just becomes a number. And when you have an x squared term, what you're doing is you multiply the power by the coefficient. So 2 lots of minus 1,600 gives you minus 3,200. And you reduce the power by 1. So rather than being squared, it becomes, in a sense, to the power of 1. So I have an expression there. And when I'm looking for maximization, maximization occurs when the first derivative is equal to naught. So if you equal that to naught and solve. So 128,000 is equal to 3,200x. If I divide by 3,200, I end up with x being equal to 40 slabs. Okay, each of those being 40 centimeters wide. Now, there's no coincidence. It's just coincidence that the two numbers happen to be the same. Don't assume that just because the width was 40 that's why there's 40 slabs. And if we substitute that number 40 into the formula for y, we end up with 2 lots of 40 being subtracted from 160, and that gives us 80. So it's going to be 40 slabs in one direction and 80 slabs in the other direction. And so the number of slabs we have is 40 lots of 80 rows. 40 lots of 80 is 3,200 slabs.